Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Adobe Live. I'm your host today, Emily Poulin, and joining us all the way from Hawaii is Nicte, an amazing brand designer telling us all about brand colors and how you can make the right choices for your brand. Nicte, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing fantastic. It's beautiful and sunny over here, and I cannot complain. I'm so
I
excited to be here with you guys.
We're so excited that you're here with us. For people who aren't familiar with your work, which would be crazy that they haven't heard of you, could you give us a little background about who you are and what you work on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Nicte Cuevas. I'm a brand and hue strategist. My background is, of course, with design. I started with print a long, long time ago. And over the years, it's really evolved into how I create brand synergy, meaning we don't just think about color as one aspect, this design element as another. It's really about how everything comes together to make a message. And a lot of that has to tie with who we are trying to connect with. So for our clients, it's a lot about the people who they are trying to reach, as well as the brand ethos of what it's about. So I take all of those elements and I use color strategically to really build on that emotion and that recognition. So for me, when it comes to the strategy part before we start designing, I always start with color, which is something that a lot of designers leave towards the end. So for me, it's color is always in the beginning part of the strategy to really build that connection, especially when it comes to cultural brands. That's somewhere where I love to work with.
This is going to be such an amazing stream. I feel like there's just so much that I'm going to learn from this, and also chat. Hopefully, you will be listening and learning so much from this. I do want to say hi briefly. We have some friends. We have Jacob Paris and Josie and April over on YouTube. You guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We're glad that you're
Thank
here with
you.
us. And any questions that you have, Nicte is the right person to be asking. So feel free to add to the conversation. I will be keeping an eye on that. But we have an exciting workflow. You're going to be starting off in Firefly Boards. Is that correct?
Yes, we are going
Amazing.
to be working a little bit between Firefly Boards and Illustrator. And I love that we can now really integrate more tools, but it's still within the same ecosystem. I'm not having to worry about finding files everywhere. And I know Adobe Firefly keeps adding more and more elements, especially with Firefly Boards. So we are going to, here we go, let's zoom in. So today we're going to talk about how to make smarter brand decisions. And what I love, since we are here on Firefly, I typically have a slide deck done. But I think that what I really love about the Firefly boards, which we can have unlimited elements inside it, is that I can keep everything in one place. So we're going to keep a couple elements over here on Firefly. Now, if you guys want to connect with me, I do have a nice little simple slide, and you guys can scan the QR code. I'm glad my head is not in the way. Typically, I always put it where my head covers it. So you guys can scan that QR code and it'll take you to connect with my website, my channels, and courses that I also have, especially on color psychology and really how you can use color strategically. I will give you guys as much insight as I can today, but I know I can't cover everything. So when it comes to branding, I mentioned that I always focus on emotion. So here is a hypothetical brand that I created. And this was done a couple of years ago when Pantone had announced Mocha Mousse as one of their colors. And every time for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years, I have had a course with LinkedIn Learning that talks about the latest color trends. And every year I try to design a brand that would fit those aesthetics. I know that year a lot of people weren't so happy with that color because they wanted something that was more exciting and more energizing. And what's challenging when it comes to color, especially color trends, is that these are forecasted 2 years in advance. So
Right.
there's a lot of things that we do on the back end. And by we, I do forecasting on my side, not with Pantone. But that a lot of the things go back in predicting, looking at what is happening currently and knowing what could be trending in the future. So because people are going through a lot of things around the world, we tend to seek personally color to bring us joy, to bring us comfort. And with this color, I always like to think about how can we use color to connect, to bring about certain emotions. And sometimes what we think with color trends is that it's one dimensional. You only have to use this color and that's it. But it's about how you pair colors. So thinking about anytime you're building a brand, think about how you will pair that color and how it works with others. And I'll show some of the process that I do about testing how colors can interact. But what I always do is in my process, so this is kind of like what the brand looked like. And I didn't want the mocha mousse to be the start of the show because it felt one-dimensional.
Mhm.
So the whole idea for this brand concept was Chocolox. It means chocolate and love. And
Fun.
in Mayan and Aztec, chocolatl is how they would spell chocolate. So it's with an X.
Oh,
So
cool.
because I wanted this to be connected to some of my heritage and really being about the ground and the land, that's where this brand was brought about. And what I did was that I created emotions for each color. This is always part of my process. Now, I'm going to jump back into Illustrator for a second and show you guys what I mean by that. So I'm going to give you guys a few, and I'll show you kind of like the unpolished versions. But for all of my clients, these are the things that I always do. And this is part of the process from when you discuss with your clients what the goals are, what you want people to feel when they're connected to the brand. You need to take that language and think about how that ties into color. It's not about that personal approach. I know I mentioned that earlier, how it makes us feel. We have
Mhm.
to think about when it comes to a client and their audience, how it will make them feel. And it's sometimes tricky not to make those personal choices, but that's where I always make that connection. So in one of these brands that I created for, it was a wellness brand, and she offered yoga, doula services, and she also had her custom teas.
Wow.
So what we did was that we built her line of teas based on the flavors that were about that brand and the emotions that were around those. So, for instance, we had spiritual purple, and it talks about or it focuses on resilience, tranquility, spiritual guidance. And then we have energizing yellow, sunshine, energy, nourishing, radiating. And what these emotions and listing what it means is that when I hand off the brand to the client, they know these are the emotions that we're trying to tap into when we're using these colors. And it's not just about let's use a turquoise because we're feeling like using turquoise. This is how you can help your clients and not just yourself from the beginning, but your clients also build that strategy behind how they use those colors. And then that strategy was carried out through the packaging. So for her savory blend, we had more of those warmer hues and the tones, and we would still have her packaging. So here's a little bit bigger view on what the packaging looked like. So we had different flavors, different color combinations, which were still part of her brand. And we made sure that they were cohesive to where it would still be recognizable over time for her brand. But people knew that whenever we had certain colors, for instance, with the purples, and we did maintain that orange color as the combination. So it was consistent. But whenever you see some of the purple, you know it's the mellow blend or the bright blend and the savory blend. So you think about color strategically and how it pairs, but how you're going to use that across the marketing, making sure that when you make that color decision, it carries throughout and not that, oh, we're going to switch the mellow blend to now have some of the teal colors and more of the yellows, because then that starts to diminish your effort. So a lot of this testing has to happen on the beginning, and then you can define that and you give your clients those parameters. So this is kind of like the final portion of that, the same process that I follow for every other brand. Here's another brand that I did for Oferaki, and it was for a Hispanic and Latino market where they sell items online, kind of like OfferUp, but it's specifically for that market. And everything here from the design elements to the colors to the icons, they followed the brand colors, but we wanted to bring about that energy. So thinking about what the goal is for your brand, you have to think about those emotions. So we wanted it to represent the Hispanic and cultural identity and how we are. So we wanted colors that were energetic, that were vibrant, that would make people feel comfortable and proud of who they were. So these were all the colors that we used. And I know typically brands tend to stick to one or two colors. Whenever you see a lot of brand identities, you see one to two colors. And I would always say it depends on what the brand is about and who it's going to market to. how many colors you use. Of course, when it comes to print, you definitely do have to make some decisions as far as how many colors, but that's where you can start using color more strategically, and it doesn't all have to be at the same level of focus, meaning you could have your primary color palettes and your secondary color palettes.
I think
So
what's cool is that you are combining the brand language along with the colors. I think typically in a brand deck, that's something that you'll see very separately, right? Like these are the colors that we use, and then here are the brand words, but they live separately. So I love that you're injecting even more personality, more direction for the brand, even on the color page. Like I think that's amazing.
thank you. And it really does make a big difference.
Yeah.
Because I think also too, I don't know if anyone in the chat, you guys can let us know if you've encountered this, but whenever you are presenting something to the client, they may not feel connected to a color, or they may wonder, why are you making that color decision? So whenever you're pulling the emotions or the language that the client uses, they say they want their brand to feel energetic, they want their brand to feel connected to nature. You pull all that language and you use that
Mhm.
in these keywords, because then that connects to what they said or what they
Right.
want their audience to feel, and it makes it easier for them to understand the color direction. When you get a pushback sometimes for certain color applications, having that explanation as to here are the emotions that this taps into, and here's how you can use it to your advantage in a good way to help connect with your audience, it makes it easier for them to see that. And what really helps more is that application, which is
Mhm.
kind of what we're going to talk about in the process of how we can use Firefly to make these color decisions. But I can't stress enough how much of a difference it'll make if you embed this in the beginning of the process, or for when you're actually presenting it to the client, letting them know what these colors mean and how it connects.
I think that's great. Even to your point earlier of, these aren't personal decisions, right? These are a brand decision. I think that can help the client see it in the same way of, it's not the, oh, it doesn't resonate with me, right? Like, how does this actually align with our brand goals and the vision? I think that's brilliant. People in chat are agreeing. They said 100%. Also, we're getting some love for your glasses. They say your
Oh,
glasses are making them want some more color in their life. So I love
thank
that.
you. Here's my little
Oh,
they're
a
interchangeable.
trick. Okay, very cool. Mine are just one and done. I love that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I love these. I can interchange them
That's
as
awesome.
my mood fits, which is really nice.
Or as the brand, for each color, you can swap them
Yes.
out. I love it. Very
Yes,
cool.
thank you guys. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I think color is such a fantastic and wonderful way for people to connect. And there's that personal connection, there's a cultural connection, there's a physiological connection that we have to color. So we always, when thinking about colors, we have to think about where is this going to connect? Where is this going to interject with the client and the audience? And a lot of times too, one of the things, if you get pushback from a client, even going through this process, I have encountered sometimes a pushback. And they may say, well, I don't like this azul energético, this particular blue. And I always try to unpack it more. Is there a reason why you don't like this? And it's
Mhm.
not just keeping that broad question. Sometimes I start with that and they might be able to tell me. And sometimes they're like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. I try to dig deeper to see if it's a personal thing. Does this remind you of a brand that you didn't like how they were
Sure.
working? Does this remind you of a personal experience you had with that color? They might have fallen off a bike that had that particular color and broke several bones, and there's that
Yeah.
memory ingrained with that color. And what you can do if there is a pushback, and they might just say, I don't like that color. Great. Let's see if we could make a different color decision. That's good to know. But here's how this color would be the best fit to align your audience with this particular emotion or process. One of the other things too that I always do with brand colors is that you can apply brand colors for specific purposes. So if it's a brand that has courses, you can have colors like within the blue range because they tend to connect to trust and leadership. So you can have more of those leading hues. Still have if your main brand colors aren't the blue, you can still bring that as your secondary or accent colors, but have a little bit more of those so that you start to indicate over time, This is going to be the course content that we put out. And so your brand doesn't end up looking like a confetti of color uses. You're being very strategic and specific with how you use those colors. So these are, again, examples. I just wanted to bring this up. This is another one for Creative Pro,
Wow.
Creative Pro Network. I know a few
Yeah.
people know that I did their rebrand. I think it was in 2022, 2023, so it was a few years ago. And I absolutely love what they've done afterwards. So the hard work that you do in the beginning and giving people the guidance as to here's how you use the colors, here's how it's going to be used, and then they can take it and run with it. And ever since we worked together, I love what they've been building for all their events that they've been doing and all their social, and it's pulling from the hard work that we did. And this was a true collaboration. It's not just me saying, here's the colors, let's work with it. You have to have that collaboration and conversation with your clients, and that's when magic happens. So that's kind of the back process of working with colors. Now let's jump back. We're going to go over here and we're going to jump back into how we can use Firefly for, there we go. I'm working with two screens. There we go. How we can use Firefly for ideation. So let's say this client, we had originally built this, and what they like to do is that they would provide these high-end chocolates made with most natural ingredients, and they work with indigenous communities to create this chocolate. And for every box, they would have a particular flavor. So these were some ads I made for them, again, thinking this is a real company, for them in Adobe Express, and each flavor would have a different color. So this is where we got specific with the color uses. So this one had mole in it, which is a little spicy, and we kind of had a little icon that says picoso slash spicy, and the colors would reflect a little bit of that fiery red. And then for this one was just honey truffles, where that kind of was the flavor. And so we had obviously that nice warm honey yellow, and we had a little icon that says dulce sweet. And so that's how we would pair their packages. But let's say your client comes back and says, hey, we're considering doing an additional line of flavors, but we're not quite sure how that would look like before we go into production. We want to get an idea of how this would look like. So here is where we can use Firefly to help with the ideation process. So what I did is I brought in some of my brand assets from Illustrator into Firefly. And I will say that in Illustrator, there is a way for you to select your assets. So you can kind of select what you want to bring in and go over here to the top far right icon and click on Open in Firefly Boards. So that's a quick way to get it right through there. You can also save it to the cloud so you can access the Illustrator file. But for some reason, because I like to push the internet, it's not working for me right now. And I know that's probably something on my end, but that is a really, really great way for you to use the interoperability of working inside Adobe app ecosystem. So you don't necessarily have to manually upload an ad. But what I did is I brought in all this content into Firefly or Firefly boards, and I organize it where I have my brand assets. Then I went into knowing, okay, they're going to focus on two flavors. They want to introduce the mango orange flavors because they want it to be about natural energy and they want this vibrant approach. So they want to push the edge a little bit more with these color packages that they want to deliver. And then the other flavor is blueberry figs. So what I did is what I do love about being inside Adobe Firefly Boards is that I went and searched some of the stock images that we have. So what I did is I went right here into stock. The old way that I used to do is I used to go to Adobe Stock, download, and then upload, and now it's all inside here. So I can go in looking for some keywords. I went and looked at chocolate and then kind of saw what was coming up. There's some really great visuals over here. And let me just add a couple over here. I think I have already added this. You can see I've licensed already a few of these elements, and I like how you can see the ingredients or the spoons. And one of the things that I love about being able to do this is obviously you can add this. I did already have that image, great. You can add this to your board for inspiration. And then what I've done to help me in this process is I did this ahead of time because this does take me some time, but I built in prompts. So What I have found personally, the best way to go about this approach is that I still, and this might be a little old school of me, I still like to work with some reference images from Adobe stock, and I look for visuals that kind of have that alignment of what I want, whether it's the angle or the elements that are on here, and use that as my image reference. Then what I do is I go in and have prompts created. So I have my prompts for specific outputs. What I did was I made a goal, okay, I want to have 3 different sets of images for each flavor. So I have 3 different types of styles of image that I want to render, and then I can just copy paste this and make some adjustments. For instance, in here, let me get out of here, but let's unclick that. On the very top one, it says for the mango orange, I kind of want a flat image. In here, I had used Claude to kind of help me refine these, and I have here where it says warm, amber, and gold tones. What I would recommend is if you have a specific color, and I'll go through that process too, that you want to use, you can go in and use those hex colors as reference points. When working with print, even if you start with hex colors, you are going to have to do some work on the back end just to make sure that if this does go to print, it's not going to look off because CMYK will look different to RGB. But here's a way for you to at least show the client what that looks like. So once I have those prompts ready, it allows me to work much faster. So I have discovered a much more efficient way for me to work with using artboards inside Firefly. So the old way that I would do is I would select the image that I felt best represented what I was trying to do, and then I would go about creating that prompt. So let's select this prompt for this image. And I wanted to have this top-down view. So I can select this old mock-up that I had of the box, and I can go into generate image. I can put in my information. Actually, let me reference this. And then I will go about generating that. And it's going to take a little bit of time. Let's see, click on generate. And I found that sometimes the results weren't as great, or it would just
Mm.
give me different results. So what I discovered is if I take all of these, I'm going to let it do its magic on the background. But what I discovered is if I brought in everything into this, so I just kind of, and it's disorganized, it's okay. We're going to keep it raw and just to the moment. If you bring everything into here, what you can do is you can actually reference the entire artboard for your creation. And when I did that, let's see if it's done generating the image. Okay, that's fine. But you can see here, this was a result that I got up here.
Sure.
And I use the same exact prompt for that I just using for the box. So we might get a different result. But what I did instead was that I selected the entire artboard as the image reference. And then I got this result. So let me make this much larger so you guys can see. And I absolutely loved it. It took
Yeah.
in the box, it gave it a different angle from what I had, which wasn't the best to begin with. Took the box, and now I have all these beautiful, delicious ingredients. And you can see it kind of brings in some of that chocolate dipped oranges and the mango, and then you have the truffles here, and you have those nice little golden flakes in the middle. And that was all from selecting the entire artboard as my image reference. So let's see what it created with on the back end. Aha, so here, let me add this to place on canvas.
I would
Perfect.
love if you would show us how you reference the entire artboard because I'm familiar
Yes,
with, referencing the single image, but I think that's amazing and such a great workflow.
absolutely. So I wanted to have that in the difference. Ooh, but this is
Did
a
it
nice
brand the
little,
chocolates? That's
yes,
so
it did.
fun.
I love
Okay,
that.
Firefly. That's so
Oh my
cool.
gosh. See, I hadn't thought of that. That is
Right?
brilliant.
I love that.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. Okay, the client would love this. I need a client that wants this, actually.
If that's you,
Okay.
chat, speak up. We'd love to give this brand to you or let you work with
Yes.
Nicte.
Okay, so let's do that same process and actually
Yeah.
follow that prompt because I do love how what the results that we got. And actually, let's spice this up a little bit and bring in maybe another image. Let's see. Let's bring this in and see what this does. And while it's not around the same color, I do like the idea that it's showing some of the ingredients.
Right.
So what you would do is you would go in and select your prompt and let's see. I'm actually going to select a different one. Let's see if we get a different result. I'm going to select the second prompt. And what you're going to do is you're going to go into generate image. And I'm going to paste that prompt. Okay, let's see how this turns out. And I have found some of the best results sometimes with Nano Banana. I know there's, I think the Nano Banana Pro, but let's just keep this Nano Banana 2 because I think it's a little faster. So we're just doing this for our speed purposes. Then under image reference, here's where you click on that and then you select over here. You see how it, I don't know if you guys can see, but it kind of highlights lightly the artboard. And then you see it highlighted the entire artboard. So if you wanted to remove certain areas from the artboard, you just wanted to reference that smaller portion of the artboard, you can decrease that or you can just keep it to reference the entire thing. And then you click on generate. And then we're going to let it do its magic and add whatever magic we get results from that prompt. But for me, this was a lot more efficient instead of selecting or now add this or now add that. I could just bring it all together and then see what results we get from that. So this is where it's really great to start to see how these, brand images start to come together. How do we start to see these changes? Now, the only thing we haven't tested is this box. And I think with that second prompt, I did have some text here that says the box color is warm and amber orange. I didn't add any specific hex colors, so let's see what the results are from creating that. So while I wait for this to render, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can go about making some of these color decisions and refinements in the digital stage. So one of the things that I love to do is look at color interaction. And Joseph Albers was the one that did these color study tests where he would look at how colors, when they're paired together, interact with each other. So depending on how you paired colors, the mood or the emotions will shift. So what I have always done is whenever I'm making color decisions is I have this square, which is what Joseph Albers would do. And he would compile the colors together. And what I always do is I have my key color or my focus color in the center. That's the leading hue. That's the one that I want to have the leading emotion with. And then I start to test how it looks with other colors. What I typically do is I do this inside Illustrator. I think it's just because it's the old habit quick. I can go in and change this, but you can essentially create a square, another square, rectangle, rectangle inside Firefly to do these quick tests. And then I would just go use the eyedropper tool if I'm trying to use different colors and start to do those tests because that will allow me to see how much of each color I should focus on when I'm doing the design. And you can see here, there's a different feeling from this area to the right area. So when you use that in application, you start to think about how much of that color you would use for your design, your packaging, or even social to bring about that mood. And that's where all of these colors together can form different directions. And that's kind of where the example of the packaging with the other client, that's the direction that we went with. So let's go back and see what image. Oh, okay.
Ooh,
I do like where we are going here. That is beautiful.
I like the gold
Okay.
foil treatment, right? That's not something that we saw
Yeah,
before.
absolutely gorgeous. All right, let's make this large and in charge over here. All right. Oh my God. I absolutely
Wow.
love how that came out. I think the client would want to start doing gold foil for that.
Yeah, that's gonna sell it for sure. That's on the
Yeah.
website.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
Wow.
I love just the details, the angle. This wasn't something that I was able to do when I had, and this was, when we didn't have Firefly to the point that it is today, and I had to use the old way of you buy a mock-up and you try to
Right.
work with what you have, and I only had the cover, and now here we have chocolates inside there, and you can see some of them are actually picking up on those color tones that we were using from this idea board that we had. So this is where I feel we can have so much to work with, and then you can present the client, here's the direction that we could possibly go with. Okay, if we're trying to do gold foil now we'll have to look at the printing costs, but we can at least visualize it for the clients. And what's even better is that, and we can see if we get to that in at some point in our live today, but where you can actually take this content and go into Adobe Express and create a social post and ask your audience, hey, we're thinking about launching these flavors. Which one sounds better for you? And you can actually use some of these images without having any production costs. Use that as here's these flavors, here's what they are, here's what the, package would look like. And you can start to build that excitement and get people to vote that way. So that's another great way to not just use this for ideation, but actually use it to get user feedback. So let's go back over here, and I wanted to create another, let's bring this guy over here. I really just absolutely love this big golden box. So lots of great images over here, and we're just gonna bring this up here. I do love that we can have infinite amount of boards inside here, which helps with creative innovation. I'm sure a lot of us don't keep these nice, clean, and tidy boards, so you guys get to see the beautiful mess behind creating this. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I am going to build the other flavor, blueberry figs. And we're going to follow the same process here. I'm just going to bring in all these images that I organized, and we're going to bring them over here and just kind of add that into this board. Now, what I really want to do is, let's see if we'll be able to do this. But because we're talking about the client wants to bring about this energy into the brand and how these chocolates are having these natural ingredients that have energy, I want to try and see if we can create something that will drive some of this energy and maybe feature the chocolate somehow with this guy jumping up in the front. Now, I am going to show you guys a nice little hack. Over here is inside, I think it's the main page for Adobe Firefly. You guys have access to some board instructions. So if you're still new to using images or kind of creating your own brand image, I literally copied, pasted the instructions from that board. And this is where some of those ideas for creating these brand assets came from. And under here, they provide, or Adobe provides for us, these instructions on how to generate these variations and kind of how to go about this process. So it's a really great reference point that I highly recommend for you guys to do it. I think if I go to Firefly and let's see, I believe it should be under the right here. So it's workflows. So there's several different workflows that you guys can access. And once you click on that, you'll be able to, this is the one that I was showing to you guys, you'll be able to copy that onto your own boards. I literally just selected everything and pasted it here. It's just really great for reference. So I did want to bring that because I also, sorry, super zoom. I also discovered that if you are liking what some of these images or what the renders were, if you select some of the examples and you click on load, you can actually see what the prompt was for that image. So if you like what you see within these examples, you can select that or make those fine tweaks to create something within your brand. So I really like these as reference, and that's what inspired that energy about holding the product. So we shall see if my prompt works for that idea. So for instance, let's see. Here is the prompt. I forgot my English for a second. The prompt that I had for this energy, I kind of had this lifestyle image that I had in mind for that design. So we're going to use this here. And actually, I'm going to do this. Here we go. Because I don't know if I want everything in here, but I do want some of these. Let's remove this. Let's see what it references with this image. Okay, so I'm going to select this again. Go here, and we're going to paste this, and I want to make a few changes. This is, okay, holding an open luxury chocolate box at the chest height, deep purple background. say, um, here's where let's try something. Let's pause for a second. And here's where I do like that we can create some color references just for our testing purposes. Let's say I do like some of these like purpley blues in the background. I can go in and I will backtrack. I went through quick. So I will go in, add a shape. I just added a rectangle. And then what I did is I clicked on select color and that'll give me, if I click on custom color, it'll give me the eyedropper tool, or if I knew the hex color, I could always paste that in, use the eyedropper tool, and then I found the color that I liked as my reference. And now I can just double click, make sure I copy that hex color. And then we're going to go back into our selection and our prompt, and with a background, oops, not Spanish, background color.
I actually didn't know that you could define the hex code. That's a great tip to know.
Yeah, isn't that it? So
Yeah.
it sometimes works,
Okay.
sometimes it doesn't.
Fair,
But
fair.
I've found that if you are a little bit more specific about where you want that color to appear,
Mm.
it'll work. I've even tested out sometimes on skin tones. I we can talk about that other project that I was mentioning to
Yeah.
you, which we'll bring that up in a moment. But it can work sometimes. It's just a matter of testing. And okay, let's see. All right, we're gonna test this out. And
Referencing the whole artboard, our newest favorite feature.
yes, I am like, this is a game changer for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really does. Okay, let's click on generate. It really does make it so much easier because I was struggling trying to make those edits
Right.
one by one by one by one. So this is, and you get something different every time. I mean, I'm still obsessed with this beautiful gold foil box.
Yeah, the
So
packaging cost went up a ton, but it was
I
worth
know
it because it's beautiful.
it's okay. Let's just say that this client has an unlimited
Infinite
budget.
chocolate budget. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's for dreams come true. It's
Yes.
fine.
Yes, it's that. What is it? The New Age Willy Wonka factory where they
I
have
was
all that.
thinking, yep, Willy Wonka indeed.
Yeah.
That's too funny.
Yeah, so let's okay. So while we wait for that,
Yeah.
let me go back and show you guys another project that I did where I absolutely loved Firefly boards to help me through this process. So because I love about looking about color and color trends, I had done this study where I called it my Super Bowl hue intelligence, and I used Firefly boards to come up with just it was over 9 years of what were the winning colors for the Super Bowl every single year. And what was so fascinating in this process is that I went through the process of kind of this is the end result at the very top here. This is where I had the players, the colors, and I created all of these images with Firefly so that I wouldn't get in trouble with the NFL, which I absolutely loved that. And I started with the color notation. So I had my colors ready over here. I had them so that I could reference them. I had notes on what year the which team won, who was their quarterback for each year, and then I had reference images that I used from Adobe stock. Again, I just that for me just works much better because then I can have the right references. And then I can still go in and click vary. When I did that, it gave me these variations and I tested them out for each of those images. And these were one of the images that I also ended up using. Then I also had my prompts. That's kind of my standard. If I'm going to be prompting, I'd like to do the work ahead of time so that when I'm working on the idea, I would do that. And here is where, let me zoom in because it's a lot of text. Here's where I tested using the hex codes for the particular jersey colors and the jersey numbers, and it did work. It just, I think it depends on which, not just the prompt, but which partner you use, a partner model.
Mm.
I have found success both with Firefly and Nano Banana, so those were the ones that I kind of was staying in between both of them and then testing them out. Let's kind of close this out. And that's kind of what I did. I started to do those, and then when that happened, here I created some of these, and I absolutely love this because I took it a step further, and using that same thing, I created videos.
Oh, wow. I love that video is inside Firefly, that you or Firefly board, so you don't need to leave. You can just stay in one place. I just think it's amazing to see your images come to life like that.
It was
Wow.
super, super exciting. And I showed this to my husband. He was excited because my husband's from Kansas City, born and raised. So
Go
that's where the
Chiefs.
Chiefs come from.
Yep.
I wasn't born here, so by default, I'm like, okay, go Chiefs. But this was like, he was really excited. The one thing that I did run into was the skin tone. Of course, it's not really referencing Patrick Mahomes' skin tone. So I did test out several variations where I try to put different prompts, try to use some of the hex colors. There is also, Pantone has a Pantone color guide.
Mm.
So what I did for one of the other live streams that I did with Adobe and Creative Mornings earlier this week was I showed how sometimes you can use that Pantone color guide to have references, and then you just get the hex color by doing the conversion through
Oh, very
Pantone
cool.
Connect.
Yeah.
So it's very helpful to do that. But again, it's a lot of testing. But I just was obsessed with all sorts of different videos. Let's see if these,
Oh, cool.
I just got so many different variations from all of that. And from
Wow.
prompting and just saying, here's kind of what I want. Here's the end image with the smoke. And it was super exciting to see. So I kind of,
Whoa.
I
I feel
got
like you're
super
gonna
obsessed with it. Yes. And
you're
which
gonna
was
work for
great,
the NFL, I feel like at this point.
right? Absolutely. I'm like, hey, I'm up for hire.
She's ready. Sorry, what were you gonna say though?
But I think that one of the greatest things about being able to use Firefly boards is that you can keep everything in here and you can share the board with your clients so they can go in, click play, get a view, add comments. It really makes the collaboration process so much more seamless. And before we kind of like conclude at least this part of our stream where I'm showing this, one of the most awesome things about this process for me was that I discovered this pattern where it was cool hues and warm hues and a cool hue, then warm hue, then cool hues. So it was really interesting to see this pattern. And there is a saying when it comes to sports that red hues tend to be more of not just that love that everybody thinks about, and broad color terms are a little tricky. But when it comes to sports, these red, warmer hues tend to be more about aggression and strength and energy, so they tend to overpower. But it was very interesting that we see these similar hues. And what is really fascinating is that the Patriots and the Seahawks actually share the same Pantone color.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Yes. So I discovered that there's another team that has um, another Pantone color, and I don't know where Seahawks. I kind of had that in here. Patriots, Seahawks, they share that same color. I think it was the Denver Broncos that had also shared that same Pantone color. So it
Huh.
was very interesting to see that several teams share the same color. And then the Buccaneers and the Chiefs red is just one Pantone
Oh,
number
it's so
away.
close.
Yeah,
Wow.
very close. But when you look at the colors, I'm like, yeah, you could see, of course,
Right.
digitally, a subtle difference. So it's very, very interesting. And again, all of these images were done with Firefly.
That's so
And
cool.
if this was me to have the budget to do that, that's a lot of money. So I
Right.
love how we can visualize and say, hey, here's what could be possible. Here's what the campaign could look like. And for me, it was more of that color study to see what the trending colors or how it ended up being for each Super Bowl. And I was able to find that pattern, which was fascinating. And then finding multiple teams sharing the same Pantone color.
According to this, though, does this mean a team that has red as their main color is going to win next year? If we're seeing the pattern here, I don't know what
I'm
we're
kind of
saying, but
hoping.
we may have to
I
come
am
back to the stream in a
I
year and
know
see.
next year and
Yeah.
to be continued.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that's so cool though. Yeah, especially with budget and referencing and all of that. I think yeah, an amazing use case for Firefly boards.
Yeah, yeah. So it was fascinating, and it took me a lot less longer to build if I would have done it the old way. I mean,
Right.
this would have been a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was fascinating to be able to go through that process. Now let's see what this. Okay, let's see. Place on canvas. This is where I love that we can jump to another project while we wait for this to show. Not the result that I wanted because I think the chocolate box, my fault.
It's levitating.
Yes, but I do like the energy though. I do like the
Right.
pose of how now he's facing forward. He has that energy. So, a few things that I could do is maybe just remove the chocolate box. Don't know if this will work, but let's test it out because sometimes the simple prompts work. Sometimes they don't.
It did do well though with the color, right? I feel like the hex code is something that
Yes.
we were looking at. Looks like it nailed that, which is great. We have the action, we have the model,
Yes.
everything. So a lot of things did
Even
go
the
right here.
shoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Oh
shoes,
yeah.
the shirt, like all these little details, like I absolutely love that.
A
And I love
monochrome.
that you can give it a specific color prompt, but it knows, hey, let's not just keep the shirt orange or the shoes brown and black. I think that's what they were. Like it
Right.
changed it for us. And I do actually love, like the details of how that turned out and the fact that he's like facing forward, which was really, really great. So let's see kind of what happens with that. But here's what I also love about when we are using Firefly boards is that you can, let's just delete this for now. It's going to pretend that we can keep this guy here. So you can start kind of building this mock-up of what things could look like. So sorry, I'm trying not to be too clicky for you guys. But here we have this image. I can just quickly remove the background and I can start to now overlay things on top of this board. So I'm able to start creating this content. And let's see if this generated the image. Ah, perfect.
Oh, well, yeah, it's great.
Perfection. Yes. Okay. So here's what we can do. I absolutely love that we can do this. Okay, so now I can test something out. Let's bring this back. Let's bring this over here. I think I had something. No. Okay, perfect.
I just saw that Jacob Phillips in chat is saying that what you're predicting next year is that the 49ers are going to win. So the
Hey,
sports are
we'll
going
see.
crazy.
We will see. Yes. That would be there's this whole big betting community that actually people will let's see if this will work. That people will actually use any type of referencing and data to see, what they'll predict to gamble for. So I don't gamble, but hey, if someone uses what I've, potentially forecasted, just let me know. I will take donations. No, just kidding.
That's so funny. April in chat is also saying that I feel like you could use the pink inside of the fig as well as a nice like complement color. I could see that.
Yes, that would look very beautiful.
Ooh, I
So
like what you're
here's,
doing there. Yeah.
so what we did was I just duplicated the image and then just removed the background. And now we're able to have these visuals. And so here's where, I don't know if I'm going overboard and what will happen if I remove the background. It didn't quite work. I did want to have like some,
That would be cool. Like
they're
the
falling.
berries. Yeah. Raining
Yeah,
blueberries.
raining blueberries. I mean, I could try a prompt.
Yeah, why not? We have about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 minutes left.
Okay,
So
let's see. Let's see what we'll do
you got
with,
time.
okay, let's see. Raining blueberries.
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was one of my favorite books growing up. Did you ever read that?
I didn't, but my son has been like referencing those, and I'm like, oh, yes, okay, I need to read these.
The books were so fun. And then they made a movie and it was also very fun. But yeah,
That's
it's, there's
true.
meatballs and spaghetti and all sorts of things just raining
Yes,
from
we
the
did see the
sky.
movie. Now
Yeah,
that I remember, yes. Yeah.
pancakes. And then it becomes a problem. But, I
Yeah.
guess I guess it could be a problem. I could see it.
Yeah. But oh, I love that. It's like bringing creativity to life.
Yeah, so fun. I like that
Okay.
you were even able to make this design in Express, right? There's a lot of features that are, not in Illustrator, like, remove background and processing images with your design. I just think it's a really cool space to be able to work those things out in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes us so much easier with the process.
Yeah,
Now let's pretend this is right because I think for timing purposes,
yeah.
what I'm going to do is I have the board selected and you can have the board selected or you can select multiple assets and then click on open in Adobe Express. Okay. Oh, here we go. Let's fix this. Oops. So I don't know if I want to fix this while it's working on that. Let's try something else. So what I just saw was that I can't export images that are larger than a certain dimension, over 8,000, I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
So I'm just
pretty
moving
big.
this to the back and we're going to open this in Adobe Express. It might open it on the side window. It's going to do its magic. And let's see if this generated the image while we...
Oh,
Okay.
definite
I-
blueberries. It's
yes.
working.
Oh, yep. And now it's going to open Adobe Express. Hold on, Adobe Express. We'll come back to you in just a quick
Is it my
second.
turn?
Yeah. This actually, that's not
Ooh,
bad. I kind of, I mean, those would be really large blueberries, but it kind of goes with
giant.
yes, the movie that you, was it Chocolate
Yeah,
Meatball, Side of
Cloudy with a
Meatballs?
Chance of Meatballs.
Yes.
I influenced it somehow.
Yes, yes. I mean, that actually could, and these are some giant figs. I kind of really like this direction because you could
Yeah.
almost have that as a photo shoot. And I kind of do like the oversized blueberries. So let's see. So here's what I like. When you select all of those elements, it'll bring them in as separate pieces, but you can always copy paste them and kind of rebuild that, or you can just have that image that you exported and bring it into Adobe Express. So once you kind of know what you are wanting to go with the direction, I'm just removing the background really quick, then you're able to build that. And that's where you can now go in and create this content. What is really great about once you bring it into Adobe Express is that if you have your brand added, you can go in and reference that brand. And if you need to add any more assets or any more specific colors, you have that all embedded inside here. So you can add, let's say we had some of the patterns, so we did have some of the purple little texture background. You can go in and add a few of these elements to refine the final result for the image. And now it's all inside here. This might be a little too large, but just for streaming purposes, this is where you can start to kind of build
Yeah.
these elements and, showcase more of this. Hey, we're launching a new flavor. This is exciting. And you could even make it into like a reel where you have, here's the announcement piece, and here's more of those, beautiful. Let's go back over here to some of these. I mean, I absolutely love this image, but you can go into this gold foil version or, some of these zooming into these chocolates that are branded and you zoom in and out. So you give people more of these visual experiences for what is possible, and then that could help the client make the decision. Okay, we got 500,000 votes for the blueberry fig flavors, and people really liked what the chocolates look like for this one. So it's like, okay, well, maybe we want to brand them. It's all these little visual cues that you could use to build on color. And I know that we are pressing for time, but here is where I would highly suggest is that once you have kind of like these colors figured out, you can go in and tweak and refine them and then add them into kind of a system here. So if you're defining these are the brand colors, but then if we're going to introduce these three colors, here is what they would be. Here's kind of how it looks like when you're interacting with the colors or whenever you place them in different manners. This will help you get a better feel for the emotion behind those colors. The one thing that we couldn't cover here is that I highly recommend when you're going into the print phase, I use the color bridge. So it'll give you those hex slash PMS combinations. You also have True Match, which is another really great for CMYK. Sometimes some of the colors that I've couldn't find in Pantone, especially within the green family, I was able to find a better match with True Match. If you guys ever want to collect color on the go, Pantone does have this nice little card where you can put it against an image or a flower, whatever you're liking the color, and it'll actually capture the color for you.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Really great. Yes, I don't think they promote this enough. And then the last thing is, if you really are interested, this is one of the things that I love to use now is Color Pin Pro. It's a digital color reading device, and what it does is that you get the best color readings. It uses the NCS color system, which is different to Pantone, but you'll get a really good color reading because you'll literally stamp it on top. no light will get around it, so you'll get a more accurate read
Wow.
for the colors. So lots more stuff that you can explore with color, but really the intention, the biggest goal that I can leave you guys with is always thinking about the emotion, the experience, and how these colors come together, and how you can use Firefly to create these nice, beautiful expressions using an entire artboard as reference. And then you can come up with these beautiful tests. Where's our fun jumping guy here? With results like this that you can then go in and tell the client, hey, here's what we created, here's a possibility. Use Adobe Express to run some of these nice fun ads or get people to vote, and really use Firefly to the limit of your imagination, really. That there's, I feel like, less and less of what we can't do anymore to now what we can is available with Firefly and all the Adobe tools.
I love it. Nicte, you are the queen of color. Thank you so much for joining us today and showing us your workflow across Firefly and Express and Illustrator. We really went around the whole system today, so I really appreciate you joining us and taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited, and use color to your advantage. That's all I can say. Live
And yeah,
bold.
yeah, all the tips and tricks so that people will be ready to
Yes.
use it in their workflow. Well, chat, thank you so much for tuning in. We will have about an hour break, but if you tune back in an hour, Magdiel will be on with his show on the spot, and definitely don't miss out. But thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye.